Funding for this edition of Think Tank with Steve Adubato has been provided by MD Advantage Insurance Company, NJ Best, New Jersey's 529 College Savings Plan, the Turrell Fund, supporting Reimagine Childcare, Johnson & Johnson, Valley Bank, Delta Dental of New Jersey. Everyone deserves a healthy smile. Suez North America, the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities Clean Energy Program. And by the Adler Aphasia Center. Promotional support provided by Insider NJ. And by New Jersey Globe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Adubato. Thank you so much for joining us on News 12 Plus. We're going to introduce this program you're about to see by having Jeff Alter, who's the CEO of Summit Health. Jeff, always good to have you with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Glad to be here.
Give everyone a chance to know. I asked you in a previous segment what Summit Health is, but I don't want to assume everyone knows. They may see the logo, but they may not know exactly what it is.
Sure. Yeah. Summit Health is a connected care system with a connection to our CityMD locations so that we can really bring together a new type of delivery system that can connect your care using technology and data to bring to you all our multidiscipline practice, as well as the access through our nearly 150 CityMD locations.
You know, we talked about this in a previous segment as well, but I want to mention this to disclose that I live in Montclair. We're literally 2 blocks away from what's called the Wellmont Theater. It's a great classic old school theater that's been renovated. And there's an area where there's a lot of development, and there's a Summit Health hub. It's a medical hub there. And I had to go there to see an orthopedic specialist. And that hub has just about every conceivable clinical service line that you could. Is that the idea, to have everyone together?
The idea is to have many locations like that hub where you can get a multitude of services, with your primary care physician being the one that guides you through that. But we also want to make sure that we're able to address access no matter where you are. And that's where you take the medical groups and then connect them to the CityMDs, where when you arrive at our practice, whether it is through a CityMD or through one of our Summit Health hubs. We have a large campus in Berkeley Heights and Florham Park. We're building another one. You know that you have your care taken care of because our single technology platform knows you, our practitioners know you, and we can help you stay healthy or get healthy. And that's really the goal. And the purpose, our purpose is to build healthier, kinder communities. And I think if at Summit Health, if we stay focused on that, we will succeed.
Yeah, that is Jeff Alter, who is the CEO of Summit Health, one of our healthcare partners. I want to thank you so much for joining us, Jeff.
Thank you, Steve.
Stay here for the next 26 and a half minutes for some great programming right here on News 12 Plus. We have him back. He is, in fact, Dr. Dale G. Caldwell, who is the executive director of the Fairleigh Dickinson University Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Good to see you, Doctor.
Hey, Steve, it's great to see you again. And again, as I said, I admire all that you're doing, so it's an honor to be on your show.
I am a fan of what you're saying. No, I'm like, hey, let's do this. Let's do this. Innovation and entrepreneurship. I'm obsessed by leadership. You know, I write about it, think about it, talk about it. As I always say, make mistakes around it. What is the connection between innovation and leadership? And then we'll do entrepreneurship.
Yeah, well, that's really a great question. In fact, we added, I think, Jim Baroud, who you may know, was the executive director of the Rothman Institute, and he added that innovation to really take entrepreneurship to the next level, to really try to identify the latest and greatest. And one of the things is, you know, in this country, we thrived on innovation. And sometimes we get so comfortable, with our success that we don't look at innovation. So we're really trying to promote innovation in every aspect, but really around entrepreneurship.
Okay, so let me follow up on that. I often say in leadership seminars and in my leadership coaching in another life I have outside of broadcasting that, quote unquote, the status quo, even when you're doing well, is not really an option. It's not actually a good option, because if you're not evolving, if you're not innovating, you're going backwards. And I don't want that turned into a long-winded plaque somewhere. I really believe that in our industry, university life, whatever. Do you believe the status quo is not really an option?
It's not only not an option, see, but what's happened over time is it's become even less an option. When we were young kids growing up, there was more. Technology has made things move so quickly. We're now working in avatars. We're now doing things, and you see the rate of change has accelerated. So if you aren't moving forward, not just even, a little bit, you have to be moving forward a lot. So you have to innovate, and innovation needs to be the standard.
And so change is not a question of whether you accept change. It's whether you embrace it and drive it. And I would argue that, and again, I'm not going to turn it into a leadership seminar with you, but I have a feeling you and I could go back and forth for a long time about this, that too many people that I'm around professionally in all walks of life, they'll wait to be told what to do. That's not only not leadership, that's the opposite of innovation, correct?
That's the opposite of innovation. And frankly, people are looking for people. I don't care if you're an administrative assistant. I don't care if you're a CEO, of people who are thinking outside of the box, who are thinking around the corner. And that's the way. And you work with a lot of young people. I work with a lot of young people. And that's what we need to let them know, is that you've got to be thinking about tomorrow, today.
Before I go into entrepreneurship, and even though this is a not-for-profit, I love when people call it, oh, the Caucus Educational Corporation, you're a not-for-profit. Yes, we're a not-for-profit that has a bottom line, that has to raise money, that has to keep our expenses down, run like a very tight business. And any nonprofit that doesn't do that has problems. But here's the question. We're a nonprofit in the age of COVID, 2 years into this. We're taping this in February 2022, be seen later. COVID has forced the issue of innovation more than ever.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, absolutely. And what's happened is there's always a positive with negatives. And so COVID has forced us to get out of our comfort zone. And one of the things is this video, I've been doing a number of things with regular video meetings, and you can really, the 20-80 rule, the 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Well, if you have regular videos and you're trying to set up a program or something, the bad 80% drop off and the 20% stay on. And you can work with people across the country as if they're right next door. And I don't think people have really taken advantage of that as much as they possibly can going forward.
Let's talk entrepreneurship, A, but B, what are entrepreneur zones?
Yeah, so one of the things is the opportunity zones, which and everyone knows.
Yes,
under the
federal government supported them. Take a look at our interview with Senator Cory Booker, one of the leading supporters in the U.S. Senate regarding that. What is the difference between that and an entrepreneur zone?
Well, the trouble with a lot of opportunity zones, and Cory, I've known Cory for years, will say that is it actually accelerates gentrification in some communities. Some communities, I think Newark's done a good job of really trying to bring the community. So what I mean by that is you pay these developers to come in, they make these beautiful hotels, they squeeze out the local entrepreneurs. So I wrote an article in ROI and another one NJ Biz about this idea. Why don't we have entrepreneur zones where we create an ecosystem of entrepreneurial businesses in the economic challenged community so that they can thrive and grow and they won't be pushed out by a lot of these developers. And Tim Sullivan, who I love, is just a great guy.
New Jersey Economic Development Authority.
Exactly, New Jersey Economic, and they actually put this in the economic development legislation. And so I'm chairing a committee to really look at doing entrepreneur zones. And we're focusing initially on Trenton and Bridgeton with the idea that maybe we can do that. And my obsession is ending poverty. And I think entrepreneurship, and job growth is really the secret to really ending poverty. And that's why these entrepreneur zones are really focused on it.
Let me ask you something. You mentioned entrepreneurship and businesses coming out of communities. But dare I ask you, your father was very closely aligned and worked shoulder to shoulder with Dr. King. Dr. King was a big advocate of economic entrepreneurship and its connection to civil rights. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so my dad was in the March on Washington, and the March on Washington was for jobs and freedom. And so Dr. King and the Poor People's Campaign around that. And so if he were alive today, he would go full force on entrepreneur zones, full force on turning communities around, because the reality is IBM's not going to move into the poorest sections of Newark and hire 10,000 people. It has to be the local businesses that are thriving, that are innovative, that are meeting the needs of the community, that can do trauma-informed job training and give people jobs. And so I think this is an extension of the civil rights movement, Steve. I really think that Entrepreneur Zones is the next iteration of where this movement can go.
I'm going to ask you about the work with veterans in just a moment, but I'm curious about this. Your passion for innovation, entrepreneurship, and everything connected to that, tied to the larger civil rights fight that goes on as it should. Where does it come from? Does it come from your dad?
It comes from my dad, but it also comes from experiences. I've been on the New Brunswick Board of Education for 22 years now. I'm president of the board right now. I actually had an opportunity to be the head of school at the Village Charter School, Steve, and in Trenton. It was 90% free and reduced lunch, 90% African-American, and many of our kids, and I talked to Raz Baraka, the mayor of Newark, about this, had what looked like it was post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And so I actually coined a term called urban traumatic stress disorder and found that mindfulness actually helps folks and adults focus. And so the idea is that trauma-informed entrepreneurship training, trauma-informed job training, bringing in mindfulness. And so I really saw firsthand how when you help people thrive, then their lives are transformed, that they feel good about who they are and where they go. And I think that as the politicians in the world should be really focusing on making entrepreneurship and job creation job one.
Before we end the program, I want to ask you about this Veterans Initiative. What is it? Veterans Launching Ventures? What is it?
So Veterans Launching Ventures, we've done that for about 12 years. And this is one of the reasons the pandemic has forced us to go on Zoom, Steve. And so we had about 12 to 20 people in person. We had to go on Zoom. The program expanded to 25 states and 3 countries. We had an article in a Veterans Administration paper a few weeks ago that convinced 500 people to apply to our program. So we quickly had to pivot. So we went from one veteran program where we are training veterans or immediate family members, a 9-week program on developing a business plan and growing their business. So we've now have expanded that to 3 programs so we can accommodate the need. There are veterans out there who are looking to create their own business so they can survive.
So it's interesting. For years, got a minute left. Let's find a job for a veteran. A veteran needs to get a job. Yes, that's true. But you're saying there's another way.
There's another way. And many of these entrepreneurs, if given the support they need and the guidance, are extraordinary entrepreneurs. And they can create
their
jobs.
Training. Look at their training.
Look at the discipline that they have. You know, and that is the foundation of successful entrepreneurship. So this veterans program should really be a major investment of corporations and government going forward.
Dr. Dale G. Caldwell is Executive Director of Fairleigh Dickinson University's Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. As a student, not only of leadership, but obsessed with entrepreneurship and innovation, or we wouldn't be here right now. That's not about me. That's about our team. So I feel like Dr. Caldwell and I are speaking the same language. And I look forward to future conversations. All the best, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. Take care. Take care, everybody.
You got it. Stay right there. I'm Steve Adubato. That's Dr. Caldwell. We'll see you next time.
To watch more Think Tank with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
Hi, Steve Adubato. Welcome to a very important discussion on the current state of healthcare and the future of healthcare. We're joined by Jeff Alter, the CEO of Summit Health. Jeff, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Steve. Glad to have some time with you today.
Absolutely. Jeff, let me ask you, you come with an interesting background to Summit Health. First of all, explain what Summit Health is to everyone, and then we'll talk a little bit about your background.
Sure. Summit Health is a connected care model that goes across this tri-state region with the connection to a very large urgent care practice called CityMD.
Right. And your background?
Yeah. So I've come at this having spent the past 25 years of my career in the health insurer side, mainly with United Healthcare and most recently with Anthem. and quite frankly, gotten to see what works and doesn't work in terms of medical groups across the country. And Summit Health is one of the groups that works. And having spent the past 4 years on the board, I've always been really excited about the promise of linking a first-class urgent care network with a top medical group to create a high-quality care delivery model with hundreds of access points.
Let me do this. I'm going to disclose that Summit Health is one of the underwriters from the healthcare side that supports our healthcare programming. And the other thing is that in my hometown of Montclair, Summit Health just opened up a Summit Health facility. And what struck me about it when I was there was that everything, I should say everything, I went to see an orthopedic specialist there, but you look around and there are lots of other specialties in this building. Is that thinking and is that model, Jeff, intended to deal with what you have called the siloing, if you will, of healthcare?
Yes, we believe that one of the issues that confronts or challenges that confronts us in the way that we deliver care in the U.S. system is fragmentation of care, and the ability to have under one roof many multi-specialty practices along with your primary care physician enables you to get that connected care, knowing that you're not going to fall between the gaps of the various silos of healthcare.
Why is it taking so long to figure that out? Because on the surface, it seems logical, but easier said than done.
I think there's a lot of dynamics in play. And quite frankly, just the way that the healthcare system is really a bunch of smaller physician practices and then very, very large hospital systems, but not a lot in between. And that's I think the promise of Summit Health is to create that in-between model.
What does an aging population have to do with the larger healthcare issues we face as a state, region, and nation?
I think there's probably three challenges. One, we've already talked about the fragmentation, the cost of the system, and then we've got an aging and probably a somewhat less healthy population. And so perhaps if, in days gone by when we were younger and more healthy, the fragmentation and the chances of you falling through the cracks of the system mattered less. But as we get older, as our population gets somewhat less healthy, those important connection points really drive a lot of the cost and, quite frankly, the poor outcomes for folks in the country.
I've talked to a lot of physicians. I've done a lot of leadership coaching and communication coaching with physicians. And the whole question of quality, right? Quality outcomes, patient care. And then you got the finance, the economics of this, right? And there are a fair number of physicians, and you deal with them all the time, Jeff, who say, wait a minute, you want me to have better quality outcomes, but you also want me to have the metrics, the numbers that show that we're being economically efficient and, dare I say, profitable. Do they match up well in your mind and in reality, Jeff?
I do believe they do. The system needs to use data and technology better and differently than it has in the past. And I think that is one of the challenges of a smaller practice, is the ability to invest in those and understand how to use those to create better outcomes and, quite honestly, to prove your value. And so I do believe that there is a lot of value being practiced across the country, but getting your arms around what that's worth and how to do that in a more systematic and data-driven way is one of the challenges, but I think it's also one of the opportunities to really improve healthcare in the U.S.
What do you see as the place for telehealth moving forward into 2022 and beyond?
I think there's two primary areas where we've shown over the last 18 months or so that telehealth could work really well. One is behavioral health, getting access to those clinicians in an almost immediate way is vitally important to the behavioral health of our patients. Number two, I think the follow-up, getting people back into back into an office after they've had a procedure or is difficult. And we can eliminate a lot of hospital readmissions if we can connect virtually to those patients, find out how their dealing with, the post-surgery or not, and then intervening before it gets to the point where they have to go back to a hospital.
Yeah, it's complex stuff. And by the way, real quick, before I let you go, you learned a lot during COVID, have you not? You and your colleagues?
We have I would say that it was a great experiment, and we've learned where things work and what can and cannot be continued in the future.
Yeah, no one would have wanted to have learned from this, Jeff, but the reality is either you pivot and you adapt or you don't. And again, once again, to all the healthcare workers on the front lines, we can never say thank you enough to physicians, to nurses, to respiratory therapists, and so many others. Jeff Alter, CEO of Summit Health, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Steve.
You got it. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
To watch more Think Tank with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
We're now joined by Steve Swetsky, Executive Director, New Jersey Education Association. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
I'll tell you what, it is always great when we're physically down in Atlantic City in the convention center right there on the floor. But this year, we're not able to do that. But it was a hybrid, some in person, some virtual. For you, what has been most exciting about, and not to mention challenging about this convention?
Well, the exciting part was actually being in person again with our members and our staff. For many of them, it was the first time that they were actually together in person for 18 months. So that part was exciting. And a second part to that was the ability to also interact with our members across the state through the virtual pieces that we put together. So we took what we learned last year in a completely virtual environment, and this year we put together a program that was both in person and virtual.
Steve, let me ask you something. One of the things that's come out of this, and you and I have talked about this a lot, is the whole question of social equity, justice, right? The inequities that exist and have been exacerbated, if you will, by this pandemic. The Office of Human and Civil Rights, Equity and Governance, what is it and how is it connected to what went on in Atlantic City?
Yeah, so that's a recently created office at NJEA. And the reason we did that was we wanted to be able to both look internally within our organization around the issues of human and civil rights, equity, and our governance structures, as well as externally with our members and the public. And so that's become a place where it's kind of an umbrella for all of the work that we do as an organization. But you know what they say about organizations, show me your budget and we'll show you your priorities. That's really, what we put together here was an investment in, those issues, human civil rights, equity, social justice issues. As you point out, throughout the pandemic, those issues have become, they've been brought to light in ways that never were before. And so NJEA, we were a little ahead of the curve. We created that office prior to the pandemic, but it's a testament to the focus of our work around public education.
Steve, you joined us recently with Sean Spillo, your president, and we talked about some of these issues, but that was before the November 2nd election, the historic election. A lot went on there. Let me ask you something. From your perspective, from the organization's perspective, and again, I disclose this all the time, NJEA, big supporter of public broadcasting, supporter of what we do. A second Murphy administration, with a legislature with a different makeup, right? Different makeup, maybe potentially different mood, I don't know. We'll look at that, particularly on State of Affairs, our public affairs program. Highest priority for your organization, particularly as it relates to the children in our public schools? In the second Murphy administration?
Yeah, I would say absolutely looking ahead to what does post-pandemic education in New Jersey look like? How can we, not let that rubber band snap back and just, snap us back to where we were pre-pandemic? An awful lot was learned around education, around possibilities, around how we interact with students, with parents, with caregivers. It's a real opportunity to look forward relative to public education and see what the opportunities are, and utilizing the funding that's available from the federal government through the ARP funding. There's a real opportunity here to look at facilities.
American Rescue Plan.
Yes.
I'm sorry, the real opportunity, I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real opportunity here with that additional funding, which is, here now and will be here for up to 3 years, for districts to really look at what they're doing, what they learned, and how they can move forward from the pandemic, back into what we would call a more normal school scenario.
I'm going to get an update on this. The pandemic, vaccines, testing will continue to be a part of this, the science, but also people's attitudes. Have you seen any significant shift? First of all, what percentage, if you know this, Steve, of public school educators are vaccinated, number one? And number two, are you seeing any shift as more and more people are vaccinated and the results of that have been pretty positive? That's not editorializing, that's just a scientific fact.
Yeah, so upwards of 90 to 95% of our members are vaccinated. And so that's had a huge impact in terms of safety, in terms of the ability for schools to be back in person. If you look around the country compared to New Jersey right now, while there's hotspots that pop up here and there, we're certainly doing as well or better than any other place in the country. The availability of the vaccines now for school-age children, all the way down into the elementary levels, will make a huge difference. Moving away from, kind of the restrictions that have been in place for safety reasons will allow us to get back to, again, more of a normal kind of a school experience for both our educators that are in the classrooms and who work with the kids, as well as the kids themselves.
I need to say this every time we talk about anything related to the pandemic, which is everything. We're taping at the end of 2021. This will be seen later. Steve Swetsky is talking on the 15th of November, the 15th of December, the 15th of January. Steve Swetsky is not making a prediction, nor am I. That's irresponsible. Just want to clarify that, Steve.
No, it's November 15th. We'll see what happens in December and January. But I think that, your question was about, a second Murphy administration.
Right.
And great things have happened in the first Murphy administration relative to schools, public schools. And we look forward to continuing our partnership with the administration and the Department of Education as we look forward to what's next and how we can move New Jersey forward.
Hey, before I let you go, Steve, real quick, give me a minute or less on the New Jersey Public School Labor Management Collaborative. What is it? Because I know it was featured in Atlantic City. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a program that we're partnered with, along with all our statewide partners in School Boards Association, Superintendents Association, Principals and Supervisors, Rutgers University, and the National Education Association. And all of those groups, we've been working together on this project for about 7 years now, where we bring together school districts on both sides of the table, labor on one side, management on the other, and work with them to help train and develop good labor management collaborative processes in those districts. The research out of Rutgers University by Dr. Saul Rubenstein shows that in places with high levels of collaboration between labor and management, students do better, teacher turnover is less, it just provides for a better work environment, and just really good things happen in those districts when they learn and implement and utilize those practices.
Hey, Steve, thanks for joining us. We look forward next year, no predictions, being on the convention floor and interviewing people in person. Thanks,
Sounds
Steve.
Good. Yep, look forward to seeing you there. Thanks, Steve.
Think Tank with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by MD Advantage Insurance Company, NJ Best, New Jersey's 529 College Savings Plan, the Turrell Fund, supporting Reimagine Childcare, Johnson & Johnson, Valley Bank, Delta Dental of New Jersey, Suez North America, the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities Clean Energy Program, and by the Adler Aphasia Center. Promotional support provided by Insider NJ and by New Jersey Globe.
Valley's all about making life easier for clients, and that's why we're all about smiles, too. So every day, we make it possible for home buyers to become home owners, for folks chasing their dreams to become entrepreneurs, for parents to plan today for their children's tomorrow, and for communities to get better every day. You see, when we know we've put a smile on a customer's face, well, that puts one on ours, too.